With us now is Senator Mike Lee, Republican from Utah, a constitutional lawyer. He clerked for Justice Samuel Alito. And Senator Lee, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
Well, the Supreme Court today upheld the individual mandate under Congress's taxing power. They struck down the Medicaid expansion provision in a 5-4 decision. What is your reaction to the justice's ruling?
Well, it's an historic day. This is a good day for America in that the Supreme Court recognized there are limits on Congress's power. This is good for Americans who felt like it was wrong for Congress to be able to claim the power to do just about anything. At the same time, it's a disappointment to those of us who look at the mandate and are concerned with it because the court at the end of the day upheld the mandate, upheld it by concluding that it was a tax, even though Congress and the president said it was not a tax.
Now, Republicans in the House are moving swiftly to repeal with a vote scheduled for July. Without a majority in the Senate, Republican majority in the Senate, how confident are you of repeal?
Well, certainly our chances of repeal seem to be slim, given that the Senate is still controlled by the Democratic Party and that President Obama would likely veto any effort to repeal this legislation. It's nonetheless helpful, I think, to have a vote like this because it puts people on record. It requires members of Congress in both houses, in both political parties, to go on record and say once again whether they're willing to go along with this kind of approach that the overwhelming majority of Americans oppose.
Now, does this make the 2012 election all the more critical, and how much of an election issue does Obamacare now become?
It becomes that much more of an election issue. You know, anytime you have the courts declining to invalidate something as unconstitutional, it shifts the constitutional analysis back to the people. It shifts back to the people the prerogative of deciding what kind of government they want to have. And so in this instance, the court let this one go. I don't think the people are. I think the people are going to demand that their representatives in Congress do better than this. And they're going to demand that Congress allow individual Americans to make their own health care decisions.
Can the states, if they want to, refuse to implement the law?
Well, the states can, as a matter of raw political power, to decide to do just about anything, including that. There are, of course, consequences to that. They stand to lose significant federal funding if they do. But that's where one aspect of the court's ruling today comes in handy, which is that at least with respect to the Medicaid expansion provisions, the states will be permitted to refuse to implement those because forcing them to do so would, as the Supreme Court concluded today, amount to unconstitutional coercion.
Senator Lee, when your father, Rex Lee, was Solicitor General under Reagan, you spent a lot of time growing up hearing oral arguments. You sat in oral arguments for Obamacare, the Obamacare hearings. Were you surprised at all that Chief Justice Roberts, who's been regarded as a conservative, are you surprised that he aligned himself with the liberal justices, and why do you think that he did?
It's not so much that he aligned himself with the liberal justices. That part was surprising. What was even more surprising was how he did it. The fact that he concluded that the individual mandate amounted to a tax. I strongly disagree with this conclusion. I didn't see this coming, and none of the court watchers that I know and that I confer with regularly saw it coming. So it was shocking, it was surprising, and it was wrong. I respect the fact that it's the ruling of the court, but the court made a mistake.
At one point, I understand you clerked for Justice Samuel Alito. Have you talked to Justice Alito after the ruling, and has he either shared his reaction with you or shared with you any anecdotes at all from behind the scenes?
You know, I haven't had a chance to speak with him since the court let out this morning. I consider him a close friend and look forward to catching up with him sometime soon.
Senator Lee, you are one of the founders of the Tea Party caucus in the Senate. Is this a victory or a defeat for those who align themselves with the Tea Party? And what is your message to the Tea Party right now in the wake of the SCOTUS ruling?
You know, it's in part a victory and in part a loss. But fortunately, the aspect of this case that amounts to a loss could become a victory as tens of millions of Americans from across the country join together and start to demand better of their government, start to demand that Congress recognize limits on its power, and start to demand that their freedoms be protected. This will turn into a victory for us. We'll transform this election. We'll make this election one of historic proportions, and we'll win seats in the Senate, we'll win seats in the House, and we'll win back the White House.
Senator Lee, last question for you is on a separate issue. The senior senator from your state, Orrin Hatch, this week defeated a Tea Party challenger to win the Republican primary. What's your reaction?
You know, I congratulate Senator Hatch. He won that race by 34 percentage points. He ran a hard race. He ran a very effective race, as the results of that election reveal. I look forward to my continuing relationship with Senator Hatch, and I congratulate him on his victory.
Senator Mike Lee, Republican from Utah, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.